Welcome back. Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Hey, it's time to check it. We were going to talk with Cynthia Hughes, our friend who's been on last week. She was on with us. And PatriotFreedomProject.com is the website of her organization.
Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report.
She's an extraordinary leader, someone who has built an operation that has served thousands and thousands of January 6th family members, as well as hundreds of defendants. She's off today, what we say in the business, on assignment. It's actually her birthday, so happy birthday to Cynthia Hughes. We'll miss her, but she subbed out with a great friend of ours too, Tim Hale. And Tim Hale, Tim, I was previewing it earlier. It says it sounds even worse when I say it out loud. Timothy Hale was the felony charge against him was just thrown out. I don't know if it's gone through all the processes, but it's going to be thrown out. So he will have been basically adjudicated on 3 misdemeanors, which probably meant 0 jail time if you could go back in time. And yet you spent more than 3 years in jail. It's the most insane, outrageous, no violence, no window breaking, no stealing lecterns, no anything. The only thing you did that was really egregious to me was at one point on camera, you were sort of dancing in one of the areas as celebrating America. It wasn't your best dance moves, Tim, but still. So how, first of all, Tim, welcome to the program. How are you not all the time pissed? And maybe you are, and you just don't show it. I mean, how do you reconcile what happened with what should have gone on?
Well, thank you for having me back on, Ed. First off, those were great dance moves. They were insane.
No,
I don't know what
come on.
Yeah, well, I'm not always pissed. I always like to say I'm a very stoic person, so I take the world how it is, not how I want it to be. This is a very long game, and so I've made it this far, so I'm not going to lose sight of the end goal. So it's as simple as realizing that they've been dragging this out for years. They're going to keep dragging it out. There is good news. Several defendants so far have had the 1512 charge, vacated from their case. That's a good thing. And so, if I gotta be on the back burner for a little while longer, so be it. I'm glad that at least at the very least, I know some defendants are receiving justice after so long. So that's a good thing.
We're talking with Tim Hale again, PatriotFreedomProject.com. You can see the work of that Tim and I and Cynthia Hughes heads up and we support. Tim, how do you think, I'm talking about you for a minute, but go outside, like Will Pope, our friend, he's got to go to trial. There's a lot of other cases that are still out there. Are you, do defendants and January 6ers think Trump's got to win to give us a chance? Does it, because it feels like to most Americans that Trump's got to win, in my opinion. It feels like things are going the wrong direction. It would be even more if you're some of the January 6th that think the only way I can get out from under these DOJ, totalitarians is a change of president.
Well, I mean, there's different ways of looking at this. First, I'll say you just mentioned Will Pope. Fortunately, Will just had his 1512 officially vacated just now by his judge. Right. So that's a good sign. He's still got to deal with, I think, one other fake felony charge, but that's a good sign. The truth is that we do need Trump to get in office for a lot of reasons. 1, for pardons. 2, so that we can get the truth of the full scope of infiltration by the feds, what actually happened, because they're never going to tell us the truth, because this is a partisan witch hunt. And I think in general, 3rd would be just making defendants whole. If there's ever going to be some restitution to those who suffered, it's not going to be under this administration. But I do think it's important knowing the nature of government and how not just corrupt, but how flawed, systems always are. I always tell people, even though it's corrupt, you have to engage with the system because it's the only option you have. So you can't just check out of this system as you're being prosecuted by it. So it's important that we fight these legal battles as well as we can, as hard as we can, and as long as we can, and not surrender.
We're talking with Tim Hale, and I sort of buried a little bit of the lead. Tim's story was he is a veteran, had worked for the Navy as an analyst, not in official capacity at that point, or not as a Navyman. I think I'm getting it right, but all these things, had clearances, never violent, no issues, and you got rung up like this so dramatically. When you see the select committee, this is what I want to say. You're also a reader and a writer and a thinker, like you do a lot of that way of communicating and working through things. When you see what the select committee did, And then you see this memo that's come out in the last couple of days that basically in writing, they say Trump said, make sure you secure everything to the military. And the military didn't do it. Ostensibly, I think maybe it's in the document because the optics they thought would be bad. So the commander in chief says, protect the Capitol. They say, oh, the optics might be bad. And therefore you get chaos, and then the select committee doesn't cover that. That should be the end of it. That should be the end of, there was no insurrection if President Trump is trying to say secure the Capitol. And you watch this whirl back and forth, and you must say to yourself and think to yourself, will anyone ever, not, the truth is becoming known, but the public is not being enlightened. They've been brainwashed and nobody's unbrainwashing them. That's got to be maybe the most frustrating thing.
There's an old saying of Herodotus, the father of history. He said that the greatest pain to a man is to know so much yet control so little. And so while we were in the gulag, researching video, or even just knowing in our heads what happened that day from our experience, having no voice to communicate to the public, not having the audience that say Fox News or CNN would have, that was infuriating. But I think that you had mentioned that report. I mentioned the DOD basically dropped the ball. I think it was a little more than that. I think it was intentional. And the best way I can express this is this. I was actively serving in the military. I served 2 branches of the DOD. I was a reservist for the Army, and I was a contractor for the Navy. But the military, the government rushed to chapter me out of the military before I'd even had hearings. Meanwhile, that report indicates that there were senior members of the military and the DOD who basically faced no consequences at all. That makes it look like it was a lot more than incompetence. And I think we know at this point, especially after these assassination attempts, that this was coordinated. This was a color revolution, and I would not be surprised. And again, I have to preface this by saying those of us on the right side, we tend to revere our institutions. We respect law enforcement. We respect the military. We respect those in uniform. So it's very hard for us to question the authorities that we trust to preserve our society. But the truth is that those in law enforcement and military, such as the DOD, the DHS, what have you, they're probably the ones who were involved in orchestrating January 6th. It's an uncomfortable thing to realize, but there were probably assets in the ground. And we do know this. They're representatives of so many 3-letter agencies. The truth is that this was more than just the DOD not securing the election. Yeah. This was the DOD probably orchestrating January 6th in concert with other agencies. I can say that look, this isn't a knock against those who wear a uniform. I'm proud of my service, but especially being a history major, and especially knowing about the world, Eastern Europe, and all that, color revolutions are not uncommon. Our government's done it for decades and decades. The sad reality is that it happened in our own country. So it's just the reality we live in. So
I had somebody tell me right after that, had a lot of knowledge of these things. He said when he saw the pipe bombs, 2 pipe bombs, and the way they were deployed and how they were used as a distraction, he said that looked to him like the Joint Chiefs. And I said, somewhat naively, I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was saying the growth of the operational capacity of the military and the Joint Chiefs and all, they all have undercover, and so that was the first introduction. This is years ago now, 3 years ago. I've got a minute left. Tim Hale is our guest again, patriotfreedomproject.com. In a dream scenario, Trump wins, I guess. What's the best future for the J6ers you could imagine?
The best scenario, as far as I could say, would be this: stop the prosecutions, release those who are being wrongfully detained pending trial, those on pretrial release, vacate unjust sentences. I would say for those who maybe don't deserve pardons, and there are a couple, I'm sure, maybe reduce their sentences to something reasonable. Nobody deserves a 20-year sentence over January 6th. It's insane. And then I would say, at the very least, I think that those families that have suffered the most, and again, I don't know how exactly we would quantify this. This wouldn't be up to me, but it would be nice to see some restitution to those who've lost their homes, those who've lost their businesses.
Yeah.
Well, and I would like to see him make everybody whole.
Some people lost their military pensions. That's a whole another category. So I got to leave it there. Tim Hale, a lot more to talk about. Thank you. Make sure to tell Cynthia we wish her a happy birthday. We'll take a break. Everybody come back. We'll talk with Colonel John Mills about the upcoming election and the challenges he sees coming at us. ProAmericaReport.com. Check that out. Be right back.